Back here on One, New York's longest running sports call-in show, along with Nick DeLuca. I'm Jimmy Sullivan, and now we are pleased to be joined by Howie Karpin, an official statistician and official scorer with both the Mets and the Yankees over the course of the last several years. Howie, I'll start with the obvious here. Baseball obviously coming back this week. How have you been over the last 4 months or so, all which would have had games, but you had some time off, obviously, and now getting back into it?
Yeah, missing it like everybody else, and certainly awkward to go without baseball for a long time. Not only that, he couldn't get out on the field for us who still get to play a little bit. So that made it doubly tough. I've been following baseball a long time. You guys got your whole futures ahead of you. God bless you. I'm in this business 40 years, and I'm watching baseball almost 60. So yeah, it was terribly missed, and certainly missed being at the ballpark.
So you get to turn on the TV yesterday and you finally get it back. What was that like, finally getting to watch some baseball?
Well, except for the empty stands and all the other artificial attempts at making it, as real as possible. It's a real game, and thankfully the competition is there. So you got to give it a little time. I think people need to get used to it. Look, this is what it is. This is what they're giving you, and it's certainly better than nothing. Obviously, for those of us who are the diehards and love the sport, and there are many of us, I'm sure you guys love it. It's great that it's back, and at least it'll be something to follow heading into a weird postseason that sets up if they can get through the season here.
Howie, let me ask, because you spent a lot of time at the ballpark, whether it's the Mets or the Yankees, over the past 20 years or so. And you've obviously been around longer than that. How much do you miss? Because there's obviously a certain experience that comes with being at the ballpark and just seeing the sights and hearing the sounds of a typical baseball game. How much do you miss that? How much are you going to miss that over the course of this season?
Well, probably the latter part is, I'll miss it as we go along. It's getting used to, obviously, I'm going to be scoring games from home. So it's good. I miss the camaraderie with the media guys and just, the whole ambiance of the ballpark. Scoring from home, you're going to have to keep your focus a little more. You can't sit back, put your feet up, casually take a walk to the refrigerator, while action's going on. The only time I get a break is in between innings. But I've done a practice game already. I haven't done a real game yet. Obviously, today's the first opportunity in New York. So I'll be doing my first game Sunday night, but I did a practice game on Monday. It's just keeping my focus, and I'll miss it. I'll miss being at the park. You can't accurately score a game totally from TV, but this is the best, setup that they came up with, which is good. It's good. It's workable, but you'll never capture the accuracy that you can being at the game.
You mentioned doing the practice game. Have you found it more difficult to try and score games from home?
I've only done one, and it wasn't that difficult a game. So really there's no answer to that question until it surfaces in a big, in certain situations that you have to deal with at the game. The good thing is, except for being at the game, you can simulate everything, and then you're in contact with somebody at the ballpark that you can communicate with immediately thanks to today's technology. So, you also have, MLB's also set it up that you have access to replays immediately. You don't have to wait on the TV. TV gives you a delay sometimes, the actual TV broadcast. And, we can follow the game that way too. So, they're giving you the tools to work with. Obviously, I have to have a more difficult game than I had Monday. Monday they did crazy things because they batted out of order and they let guys get up in consecutive in 4 at bats. The same guy came up, but guy was supposed to leave the game, never came back in. So they bent the rules there because it was an exhibition game. So it was kind of screwy to follow the box score at the end. But with the real games, you'll be able to at least stick to your job and do what I've done, which is this is my 22nd year scoring games. So I certainly have a lot of experience.
Howie, let me ask you, because you just touched on the on-the-field product, and the Yankees and Mets are both contenders this year. The Yankees are a favorite for the World Series. The Mets have a chance to get to the playoffs, particularly with the expanded playoffs now going to 16. How excited are you about the opportunity to score for those two teams, both of which could be really good this year?
Well, it's always exciting when the team, has a chance to be good. Before this year, I've had a lot of opportunity to score good teams because I started in 1998 with one game, and then from there it progressed to 10 games in 1999, only in the American League. Obviously, the Yankees went all the way that year. I got to do 2 playoff games in my first year, which was unreal because you're the only one in a playoff game. World Series game, you're in a committee of 3, but everything else you're by yourself. And then 2000, I started to do the Mets and the Yankees. So, yeah, I mean, for the most part, they've been good throughout this stretch. But then, when like in 2008, when they're out of it, and you still score the last game of the season, even though there's nothing on the line. So, we don't root openly. Obviously, I still have I grew up a Yankee fan, and it's kind of in my blood a little bit. But you got to be partial. But yeah, I mean, I was lucky. My first World Series game was Game 2 of 2000, Mets-Yankees series. It was really exciting. I mean, I grew up a Yankee fan. Obviously I watched a lot of Mets and came to respect the Mets since I started the business. You lose that fandom hate, so to speak, that sports hate, because you kind of root for people because there's good people with the Mets. Got friendly with David Wright over the years, so you kind of root for them too inside. And when they're good, yeah, the games are exciting. They get more attention. Obviously, the milestone things that come along, like Jeter's 3,000th hit, we were involved in the pursuit. My partner, Jordan Spreckman, who's actually scoring today's Met game, he was the one who got to do the 3,000th hit game. So, you get lucky and you get to do some exciting things. But yeah, I mean, it's possible, a Subway Series, not out of the question.
Howie, you mentioned you've been doing this for 22 years, but this is a really unique season in 2020. You've got 60 games. You've got games that are going to be decided in extra innings with a runner starting on second base. And you've got expanded playoffs where high seeds are going to be able to choose who they play. What do you make of all the changes that have occurred, albeit because of an imperfect situation, but there are a lot of things that are different about baseball in 2020?
Well, first, I don't think they enacted that choose to play thing, Nick. I think they made it strictly 1-8, 2-7, 3-6, 4-5. That's my impression. I may be wrong, but it's crazy that they just that it's going to be wild. The 2 out of 3 is going to be a lot of pressure on the favorites, even though they're going to have the home games. Your whole season could rest on a fluky couple of days. The extra inning rule, a lot of people have been asking about it. How's it going to affect the scoring? And the runner on second is going to be deemed to have reached on an error that's not going to be charged. It's almost like in scoring vernacular, there's a thing when a runner reaches on catcher's interference. That's an error on the catcher, but if, the inning, you end up scoring runs that inning because that catcher interference reached, you don't compute that as any of the earned runs. That almost counts as like nothing unless that run scores. It's unearned. So that's how this runner on second in extra innings is kind of going to be treated in the same way. There'll be an error, but it won't go in the books. And if that run scores, it'll be unearned. But everything else from that point, the pitcher, coming in will be responsible for, even though he would get the loss if that run does score. So there's some things for the scorers now to consider with these new rules, but it's going to make the game interesting. I thought the other night we're going to go into extra innings at Yankee Stadium with the Phillies and Yankees, but they decided to cut the game after the bottom of the ninth. So I thought, here we go, we're getting our first opportunity. But I'm sure, it's going to happen at some point because I've got 20 games this year out of the 60 in town. So, I've been on kind of like an extra inning unlucky charm at times. I've had years where I've had 11, 12 extra inning games. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with the new rules. I think it'll be exciting. Even though there's more teams in, there's still a sense of urgency because you want to have seeding. if you're the Yankees and the Dodgers, you want to get that top seed in the AL and NL. You don't want anybody taking that away from you. So we'll see what happens. This is how it's playing out. It should be unique. It's going to be historic.
Howie, let me ask, because you have been around for 22 years, and the game of baseball, at least at the major league level, is played very differently now than it was even 20 years ago, with the approaches of certain guys and the increased emphasis on statistics, and especially in the last couple of years, we've seen kind of the three true outcomes with the walk, the strikeout, and the home run. What have you made of how the game has changed since you started, as opposed to the late 90s, where maybe there was maybe a little bit more of an emphasis on things like contact and getting on base, which is obviously emphasized now, but just putting the ball in play? What do you make of all that?
So just philosophies have changed, but I think it's cyclical. A lot of times we go through these things, but there's more data nowadays that people follow and believe in. It's funny. They're talking about with this extra inning rule may bring back the bunt, which used to be a really fundamental staple of the game. People, I think there's certain things where they measure, and then there's certain beliefs. Sometimes, there's certain things in baseball that you can't measure in numbers and on the field. Certain things take place. You heard about the intangibles. There's intangibles in the game. Do you move a runner from second with nobody out in the third inning and get that run in? Maybe you're looking back in the ninth inning and say, wow, we didn't get that run in when you have an opportunity. There's certain little flows in the game that people try to account for, and sometimes you just can't account for everything. So it's changed in that way, where I think there's more, data around, more trying to figure out almost, think the game at times, but it still has a way of coming back to its old roots. And as far as wins and losses and determining a winner, you still got to be fundamentally strong. The better teams find the right mix. They use the new analytical data, and they mix some of the old school and the fundamentals. So you see the better teams are the more successful teams when they can mix that.
Some people have said that because of the nature of this season, that a potential champion may have an asterisk. It might be a little bit illegitimate because they only played 60 games, and how can you truly understand what a team was going to be in only 60 games? Nationals were with the same record as the Detroit Tigers through 60 games last year. How do you feel about one team who's eventually going to come out on top? How do you think they should be held in sort of baseball history?
Well, I think the expanded playoffs adds a little more credibility to that. Number one, it helps the good teams. If they stumble for a little while or get some unfortunate rash of injuries, or a team gets, God forbid, COVID is a factor now coming into play as far as the players' health. Number two, you have to get through more rounds now to earn it. So once you're in, it's an equal field anyway. Whether it will be the best teams, who knows? That's what it comes down to in a 60-game season. So I think it's taking care of two things in that regard. But now you have to go through it. You have to win 2 more games to win the whole thing. Now, you need, 4, 7, what do you need? 11 to win. Now you need 13 postseason wins, to win the World Series. So it's made it a little tougher. So I think that'll make it a little more legit for this season.
Howie, let's ask before you go. Our sports director, Bobby Chaffardini, has told us that you're an avid softball player. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Has your softball league come back, and how bummed were you to not be able to play? I know you talked about it a little bit before, but how tough was it on you to not be able to play over the last few months?
That yeah, that was hard, but nobody was playing. So,
Right.
You don't want to wallow in other people's misery, and you don't want them to wallow in yours. But the fact that other people weren't playing at all, made it a little easier to accept. But now I got back on the field last weekend, and it was great. I mean, that's like therapy for me, even though I work in baseball and work in, sports. It's great to be around the guys, and the camaraderie with my friends who I've grown up with continues to this day, which is great. Because when I got into business 40 years ago, I always vowed never to forget where I came from and never to change as a person. And I think if you ask my close friends, they'll tell you I accomplished both of those things.
He's Howie Karpin, official scorer for the Mets and Yankees, also an update anchor on SiriusXM, and an author. I'll shout out your books before we let you go. New York Rangers by the Numbers, so you think you're a New York Yankees fan, Down on the Corner, and Shoot to Thrill, the history of hockey shootout. Howie, thank you so much for taking some time with us today. Happy baseball. Be well and stay safe.
All right, guys. Great job. And good luck to you.